Word tonight that U.S. prosecutors have charged a man who was on board a German airliner that was diverted to Toronto the day of the suicide hijackings. The suspect, an employee of Lufthansa, has been charged with possessing a false passport. He remains in custody in Canada. Meanwhile, the opposition in this country wants some answers about the handling of another suspect, a man we told you about last night, Nabil al-Marabh. The CBC's Terry Malefsky has more.
Security agents were nervous at Detroit's federal courthouse today for the appearance of 3 Arab men picked up in the FBI probe. They had airport employee badges, airport maps, and fake IDs. But the FBI only stumbled upon them in their search for the so-called Canadian connection, who's emerging as a possible link to Osama bin Laden. He is Nabil al-Marabh, the sometime Toronto resident and Boston cab driver, a wanted man on both sides of the border. He was arrested in Canada 2 months ago trying to sneak across the U.S. border, but then released.
That's tough for us to understand.
The opposition wants to know why he was let loose.
This man was apprehended with a false Canadian passport and false documents. He was turned over to Canadian authorities by the U.S. And what did they do with him? They let him out on bail.
The government said it didn't have enough solid evidence.
We do not detain individuals on whispers or innuendo. We need to have that evidence.
But there was abundant evidence, and it wasn't whispers or innuendo, but documented facts presented by the government itself at the immigration hearing in July when al-Marabh was released. Here are some of those facts. He'd been ordered out of Canada in 1994, but went underground with fake Canadian ID. He'd crossed the U.S. border back and forth illegally, and he'd been convicted of assault in Boston and was wanted for violating probation. The adjudicator at the hearing said you demonstrated your willingness to use fraudulent documents to elude immigration authorities, both here and at the U.S. border. Then he released al-Marabh on a $15,000 bond put up by his uncle. That uncle, Ahmad Shahab, is a religious leader who's supposed to be speaking tomorrow at a public meeting on Islam versus terrorism. But there's much more now on Nabil al-Marabh. Numerous reports in the U.S. say that he was on the FBI's watch list because he was linked with Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda organization. It's a tangled story, but the key is another one-time Boston cab driver named Raed Hijazi, also a Syrian. Hijazi was convicted last year in Jordan in the so-called Millennium Bomb Plot, and he is said to have named al-Marabh as a fellow member of al-Qaeda. If he did, though, it seems nobody told immigration officers on either side of the border when they let al-Marabh go free 2 months ago. Terry Malefsky, CBC News, Toronto.